Clark, where does this roster stack up with others that you've coached in your career?
Well, it's the best that we've had since I've been here. I think just in terms of depth and, part of that is developmental. Part of that has been, strategic portal additions. I think going into year 5, you should have the best roster you've had, but it's good to feel like we've got a good team in our league that'll get you to the game. We got to find ways to win, and that'll be a challenge. But we like our team. As far as my coaching career, I think it's hard to say. I feel like the game's changed so much in the last few years, but I think with where we are in terms of the skill we have, kind of our physical identity up front, we have what it takes, for us to reach for the things that we want to reach for. So I'm excited about that.
It feels like you won't have to play as many freshmen this year as maybe you have in the past. Obviously, there's guys competing for snaps, but is that also kind of a sign of progress to you that you don't have to rely on them as much?
Yeah, I think so. There are guys that are freshmen that'll, even watching the scrimmage from Saturday, seeing guys flash, that it's just about impacting winning. We don't have to force people into the depth chart, which is really nice, and we can be strategic that way. But as we've elevated our recruiting profile and we continue to kind of improve our reach in the recruiting process, there are guys that are here that can help us win. How we do that, where we designate 4 games, those are conversations to be had this week, but certainly a sign of progress and, a sign of movement forward.
Internally,
you've talked about Diego's confidence and how that kind of just floods through the locker room. With a whole season under his belt, how much does that maybe help his, I don't want to say the confidence, but the authority that he brings? He's got the bona fide, so to speak, at this point.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know that he hasn't changed. Maybe there's, for anyone having awareness of what, a year in the SEC is like, a season in the SEC, the team's response to him, a year ago, they were still building those connections. I think it's just it's a totally different feel that way. And they'll tell you, those guys are constantly talking to me about how close this team is. And I felt like last year's team was close. So I think these guys hang out together. They spend time in the building together, obviously in competition together, and then they're hanging out away from the building too. And I don't think that's, a series of cliques. I think this group spends a lot of time, with a lot of the team members away from the building. That goes a long way. We talk about relatedness being our edge. I think Diego is a key cog in that. Like he's such a connector, and his confidence. Again, a year ago it was quarterback competition stuff. He hasn't had to deal with that really. He's led from the front. He's been able to build connection with teammates, receivers, offensive players, defensive players. I've seen that happen. So there seems to be just a real cross-the-ball connection. We've had a really spirited camp, but we haven't had any times where we've had to stop practice because, they've done a nice job of being to the edge and not over, and competing at the right angle. So I credit him with a lot of that, maturity in our locker room and connection in our locker room. I think being year 2, he's had a chance to settle into it, knows what to expect. And I think he's really comfortable here in the right ways. So, yes, I'm hoping that will also show up for us in the way we play. And again, this is a long season, so we're on the front end of the marathon. But that kind of connection, comfortability, knowing what to expect from the quarterback, I think that can help a bunch.
Clark, now you said Diego back is a big boost, but How much did you jump up and down when you found out Eli was going to be coming back as well?
Yeah, that was, that was a big moment. I think, obviously, to have Eli back as a person first. This is a guy who's a spiritual leader in our locker room, has such a maturity about his process, is such a great fit for Vanderbilt football, the program, that I want to build here. So as a person, I was just really excited. As a player, obviously, this is a draft graded player who had a chance to go and be drafted this past year, chose to come back. And so he improves us on the field. I think the chemistry he has with Diego and being a consistent and steady target for Diego is a really, again, a net gain for us, obviously, to have him back. But most significantly for me, it kind of marks this change from in the first few years. We were losing those draft graded players to other programs, which obviously I think in the moment you recognize as not a part of the formula. So we have to course correct pretty quickly that way. And then we were losing guys that had eligibility remaining to undrafted grades, and so they were going to the NFL without that certainty of, or at least the projection of being a draft pick. And I think some of that just has to do with the slow turning of a culture and an environment, where I think these guys, I know these guys really enjoy being a part of this. I mean, that shines through. And I think some of that is just, with every year you're kind of replacing the old with the new, and there's some amount of scar tissue that you just can't break away. And some guys, the only way to move forward is for them to move on. But it's been neat to see, obviously, a guy like Eli look at it and say, this is something I want to be a part of. I believe we can take it further. I know I can be an important part of that. Obviously, I've said, some of this is emotional and it's feeling. Some of this is, in terms of resources dedicated too, because a guy like Eli is a valuable player. He's a valuable person. He's a valuable player, and so the department's stepping up and helping us, bring him back and have it make sense for him too. I mean, those are all part of this kind of feeling that his choice to come back shows an advancement in our program and a deepening of our process, and we're getting closer to kind of being that program that guys are not anxious to walk away from. They want to be a part of it. They want to stay. They believe in where we're headed, and we back that up with the resources we need to have a guy like Eli return, and continue to build his draft profile to go as high as he can possibly go.
Coach, how do you characterize this defense coming into the season, and what are some areas that you feel like this defense could be better than last season?
Well, I think the most glaring is third down. And I take responsibility for that a year ago. First and second down are predictors, obviously. So you get a team off schedule, get them behind the sticks, you're going to play third and winnable on third down. I think the more, especially in our league, especially as we get late in the season, the more you're playing third and 1 to 3, you're not going to have a very good third down defense. So, that was part of that. I think there was somewhat of a reluctance to play man at times, and I needed to trust a little more our ability to cover. And sometimes we weren't shortening the down enough. There wasn't enough pressure. So we've put a lot of time and attention into third down performance. And obviously, that'll come down to execution. But that has been the place where we've made most of our emphasis for improvement. I think another place is takeaways, how we attack the ball. Obviously, we were the best in the country in terms of giveaways last year, and that really created a nice turnover margin for us. But we need to be more aggressive and assertive on the ball. So yeah, that has shown up in training, that's shown up in practice, shown up in the scrimmages. That we're doing that at a higher level. So we need to carry that over to the games. But those two areas, third down performance and takeaways, that's been our focus. And we're a multiple defense. We're gonna play multiple coverages. We're gonna put it all out there. I mean, you're gonna play rotated thirds, zone blitz, quarters, quarter half, man, cover two. It's all there. Sims, same as what we did a year ago. That takes a smart player. We do the best we can to try to put ourselves in the best matchups and know where there's a player we need to cloud, or where the matchup isn't great. We have a chance to spread the hard down around the field. But this is also a year where we need to become a team that can play in the backfield and, again, create those off schedules, those higher leverage second down opportunities that create higher leverage third down opportunities to give us a chance to get off the field. And I think being effective as a coordinator on defense is being patient. It's being willing to, early in a series, absorb yards and know the right moments to tighten up and to take your chances. But that's still going to be a part of the formula. We want to force the opponent to line it up and snap it as many times as possible. But we're not going to give up the explosive touchdown. We're going to keep the ball inside and in front of us. But to be have a higher tolerance for risk in moments where we can get the opponent off schedule, get the ball back to our offense, I think it's going to give us a chance to, close the margins a little bit and hopefully separate in the right moments too.
You talked so many times, Clark, about just how this job is personal for you, given your history here and in the town and everything. But the evolution of the way things have started to go, not only how gratifying is that for you, but how much does it also embolden you in your mission to do what you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for the progress we've shown, and I think we're in an interesting place because obviously a year ago there was very little expectation, and internally we had it. Internally we saw progress, and we saw the change on the field. I mean, you could feel it, you could measure it in speeds, and I think that internal expectation is even deepened here. There's a belief this group has, which is really cool. I mean, that's what you want. And sometimes I get, people want to have an opinion about our depth of belief and the things that we believe we're capable of. And I think there's almost this sense of, I think Vandy in the public sphere, the sense that Vandy should know their place. And I reject that. I don't think you can do something until you say it. I think changing a culture is hard, and this has been an environment that hasn't given way to many winning seasons. So what is it that, as the leader of the program, that I need to model and exemplify and bring to the forefront of our consciousness every day? Is this winning attitude, this idea that we're capable of whatever we want to accomplish. There's nothing about the history of this program that holds us back. And so, as we've now experienced a year where we feel like there's, our stated mission has been supported by results to a point. It's nice to have progress. On the flip side of that, if we stop there, if we say that's good enough, we're just like everybody else that's been here. I mean, it's got to be different, and that means we got to continue to chase the progress that we're looking for, and we have to coach better. Our players have to be more focused. We can't have lapses in performance this year like we did a year ago. I mean, so I guess I get to a point now where if you ask me in January or February, I might have a real great big picture view of the world and where we are and all that kind of stuff. And there may be some more sunshine and rainbows thrown around, but right now we're in this like very day-to-day kind of granular grind of camp and season prep, and I'm excited. And yet I know, like I think part of excitement is like the unknown. We have a good team. We have a better team than we've had. We have a really challenging schedule, and the number one opponent is ourselves. If we don't conquer ourselves, if we don't master ourselves, if we don't step into every game, with high level focus, high level of execution, we can't put pressure on our opponents. So that's where our focus is now. But we're going to have fun with it, because certainly, I've experienced seasons where, there aren't any expectations, and that's not very fun. This is a lot more fun and gives us an opportunity to reach for more.
How has the defense responded specifically to Coach Gregory's leadership in camp, and what kind of stands out to you about his style as a coordinator that maybe differs from past years?
Well, he's Steve's played at such a high level. He played safety in the NFL. I think he logged 8 years. You don't do that. I mean, he wore the green dot for the Patriots for a couple seasons. You're not doing that if you don't know the game at a really high level. So he's a way to relate to the players, to communicate with the players. He's a really good teacher. He's got a clear vision for what he wants it to look like, and as everyone is different, he and I are different, but we're aligned in all the right ways. And so he doesn't get in front of them and try to be another version of me. He's himself, and that's what makes any teacher, any leader most effective. I think we complement each other really well. He's got a nice feel for the game. I think in some ways, where I'm so process driven, I think he really is sometimes got a better feel in the moment, probably a better risk taker than I am in some ways. And so I think we'll benefit from that with him as the play caller. The other part of it is I'm in there pretty much every meeting. So, I present to the defense most nights. I have a portion of what we're doing that, it was important. This is almost selfish. I didn't want to lose that element of teaching and talking football with him. That was such a refresher for me last year. And so I've stayed very close with that operation, and the package, the system is the system that we created and collaborated on a year ago. So the language is all the same, and though we've evolved it in certain ways, I feel very comfortable with where it is. So he's done a great job. I think the players have responded really well to him. I think he has a knack for not making it about him and really helping them to find success. I've been pleased with how easy it's been for me to be in and out of that room and to help kind of guide the coaches day in, day out. And I appreciate the working relationship I have with Steve, where he allows for that, because I don't take that for granted. And now we got to go put it together and win games. But I think that group has made progress. One of the things that stood out to me in training camp is just we've had way fewer just blown assignments than we did a year ago. And with a defense that's multiple, in the opening game last year, we gave up an explosive touchdown because we didn't have a half-field player in cover 2. That's not a formula to win. So we haven't had that. These guys have done a really nice job of understanding where they're supposed to be, and once you're in structure, you can actually challenge the opponent. I've been excited about that level of progress.
You mentioned the idea that maybe you guys should know your place in the public sphere, like people are saying that. Can you kind of elaborate on that and why you feel the way you do about that? Yeah,
I just people, and it's not, I don't, I've got a chip on my shoulder, and there's plenty that pisses me off, and whatever. But it's just funny to me how I think people hang on to the past. They want to judge you for the past. I mean, they want Vanderbilt to play this certain specific role in the world, and we reject that, you know. I mean, and we talk about winning here, and they tell us to, you know, be quiet and retreat to our corner, and we're just not going to do that, you know. I mean, I want a team that's assertive and playing forward and belief, aggressive, and you know, that you can't show up on Saturday and create that. I mean, that is something that has to be tangible 365 days a year, and we don't pay a lot of attention to those external opinions. We understand that, you know, we've set a really high bar here, and we haven't done that in quiet ways. You know, we've talked about what we want and talked about what we're aiming for, and you know, I don't wake up in the morning and somehow think that we're entitled to any of that. And God, if anything, if I've learned anything going on 5 years, is how hard it is. But yet I don't ever want to be a part of something that plays small. I don't want to ever be a part of something that bows to external opinion, or that somehow feels like we should be ashamed of the past. You know, this is about building something that's new and vibrant and different, and that takes vision, that takes language, that takes belief, takes alignment, and it takes time, you know. And so I just don't care. I would never ever want to be a part of something that was okay with, you know, somehow just staying in line and taking our place. You know, we're going to try to define what we want and go after it with everything we have, and we're not afraid to say that publicly, even though, you know, we're going to get judged for it. That's a part of it. But now we shift to, you know, fighting like hell for what we want, and it's going to be hard. But man, is that fun! And when you have a group that sees it the same way, you know, these kind of you know, the difference in the internal belief and the internal perception, the internal connection and the external judgment is kind of galvanizing. You know, we like that. You know, we like the idea that people don't want to see it the way we see it, and we know we have to go earn respect. So we're going to do that, and we only do that by focusing on us.
How important is Cedric Alexander to this offense?
He's become such a good back in our conference. I think with every cycle, I feel like I look up and he's growing up. You know, I mean, he's such a good person and a good team member, but and he's always been talented. But just like, you know, it's like part of being young as a competitor is learning process and learning discipline and learning how to hold yourself accountable. I think Ali's done a great job with him and built a relationship. I've seen more process in him through summer and fall than he's had since he's been here. And that's not to say he's been great, but I see him trying to take that next step. And when you look at him as a player, you know, he's physical as a blocker and physical in protection, so he kind of sets the tone that way. He's one of our best receivers, and out of the backfield. I mean, even in camp, he's made a couple of really nice plays in the passing game, which has been great to see. And then, obviously, running the ball. I mean, he's an athlete. He can make a cut. He's got great feet and vision, and get the ball vertical. I think we would love to see him, you know, break through the line and score a couple times on some explosive runs. We haven't had that, and we have the capability for that. But yeah, he means a lot to us, and yet in our league, it's gonna take more than one of those guys. So we're glad to have him, but you know, glad to have AJ, glad to have MK, glad to have all those guys in support too.
Yeah, you stressed during SEC Media Days that the SEC season can be quite long and challenging. How do you feel this team's improved from a strength and conditioning standpoint this offseason? How does it compare to last year?
Well, we have, you know, measured improvement in terms of just, again, bigger, faster, stronger. We put weight on, and I think also, like, just as Coach Steiner's been here now in his second year, and his work with Paige, our nutritionist. Just the weight we've put on has been, lean muscle mass. I mean, I'm really impressed with the discipline we've had, our players have had, the process that had been put in place by Paige and her staff, and Steiner and his staff, the way we're measuring those things and getting feedback in the moment. So there's tangible improvement there. You take a guy like Jalen Stone, for example, who showed up at right around 280 pounds. This would have been at the end of May, and now is nearing 310 pounds. Right, that's a dramatic jump in a short amount of time. I was talking about, I think on Saturday night, Mason Carter has put on about 30 pounds since he got here. That's significant. Keanu is also over 250 pounds. At least he was when he started camp. So again, you're seeing these guys build out, and AB too. I think came in right around 305. Right at the start of camp, he was just under 330. I mean, that matters in our league. That matters, right? To have that, you don't want to be playing in our conference, short of 300 pounds in the interior of your defensive line. So all those are positive signs. I think we've made it through camp to this point, relatively healthy. I mean, we've got some bumps and bruises, and we've been strategic about limiting some of the exposures to guys who have played a lot of snaps for us. But we expect to return most of our guys that are out right now right around week 1. Most of those guys will be getting reacclimated this week, and so maintaining health through the long season is the biggest challenge. And I think I mentioned this on Saturday, but we're right around 4 hours accumulated time less on the field this year than we were a year ago. So 4 total hours of practice time that we've shaved off. I think that will help us as we get into the middle of the season. You look at our schedule, we've got a 6-game stretch here to start that is going to be really hard. But that having a little more time off our feet, having a little more time to recover in fall camp should allow us to sustain through that. The thing I've been impressed with is, though we've spent less time on the field, the intensity of practice has been, as we measure it, 10 to 15% higher day in, day out. So these guys are working really hard. We're getting more done in less time, and that gives us a chance to bank recovery. So all of that has been the focus. I mean, that's what we've been looking at really since January, is how do we get this team conditioned to play? How do we get them big enough, fast enough, strong enough to play effectively in our conference? How do we sustain performance longer? And what are the things that I'm doing in my job that allow us to target those goals and reach them? And time will tell, but we're in a better position this year than we were a year ago.